Okay, so let's begin then. Hopefully we're all in the right place. Tonight's webinar is on international student applications to medical schools here in the United Kingdom. And just to introduce myself, my name is Hayley Bendel and I am one of the senior university advisors here at the Medic Portal, helping hundreds of students year in, year out in their applications to become medical students and hopefully doctors of the future. I have worked with students who are aspiring to apply to UK medical schools, in addition to medical schools all around the world. And not only UK students, but I have worked with hundreds of international students as well. So I'm very, very well experienced and knowledgeable about the extra hurdles and the barriers that international applicants need to learn how to jump over to make their dream of becoming a doctor through a UK medical school a reality. So I'm here this evening to talk about you specifically about international applications to medicine, and we'll be talking about some key points. Now, before we begin, I just wanted to introduce you for those who aren't too aware about who we are as the Medic Portal. So we are the leading resource and training provider for everybody who wants a career in medicine, as well as for people who help other people who want to become doctors. So we work with millions of students and their parents and teachers and advisors every year with a whole range of free to access information and guides, as well as extra opportunities for supporting all the different stages of your application. And this is something that we do 24/7, and we are incredibly passionate about trying to make people's dreams become a reality. So tonight's webinar, we will be focusing on 4 key areas, one of which, of course, being questions and answers time at the end. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat box or hold them until the end, and then you can, of course, then look to unmute or put them in the chat box at the very end. I will be looking at the chat box at the end of the presentation rather than throughout, just to let you know. But the key areas we are speaking about in advance of that is just a bit of an introduction to the application process and the admissions tests ahead, just to give context as to what the process is like for you. You might be unfamiliar with the UK admissions application landscape, and that's totally fine. We will be here to demystify that this evening. How to then choose your universities and maybe where to apply to and where not to apply to, as well as thinking about strategy, and I'll go into that in a lot more detail later on today. Finally, I just wanted to talk a little bit as well about the specifics about fees and funding for international students and how that differs to that of UK or EU residents who are applying. So let's begin then with a timeline to help depict what the application landscape looks like for you. So as you can see here in this chart, we're looking at starting your journey quite early. Medicine is a lifelong career and takes many, many years of reflection and understanding of medicine as a career and a subject to make that decision. So we often speak to students as young as those in year 8 or grade 7, so around the age of 12, 13. From then is a great opportunity. So if you're starting to enjoy kind of the biological sciences in school, or you've spoken to doctors, or you've done some reading, that's wonderful. And we encourage students from that point on up until the end of kind of GCSE or equivalent in secondary school, year 11, grade 10. This is a great time to develop insights. I'll talk about insights in just a moment, but that is essentially exploring medicine as a viable career and study option. As you then approach kind of the final years of high school, where you're starting to take your final qualifications, whether that be A-level or the IB or equivalent, this is where we get a bit more into the nuts and bolts of the application. And in year 12, you'll be needing to start thinking about the UCAT admissions test. This I'll go into detail in more in the future, but just to let you know, it is something that students who are currently in year 12 are needing to think about right now. So if you are in year 12, Please take note of this section of the slide later with real determination and awareness. And for those in year 11 onwards, or kind of year 10, then you've got a little less time to think about it, but still take note about how important the UCAT exam will be for you. Then as we progress into the final year of high school, then there are those nuts and bolts, which include submitting of the UCAS application. And after you've submitted the application, hopeful invites to interviews, and then hopeful places in that medical school. So there are some key checkpoints. There are I categorize them into 2 steps. And for the purpose of tonight's webinar, we'll be focusing on step 1, getting you to hopefully secure that interview. What you need to know from now all the way until your deadline, which will be in mid-October, October 15th, what you need to do and what you need to be aware of as an international learner who is hoping to study medicine here in the UK. The first thing to think about and be aware of is the UCAS personal statement. So UCAS, for those who aren't aware, UCAS is the application portal through which you will be submitting your online application to medical school. It is the opportunity for you to fill in an application form with personal particulars, your educational history, as well as a personal statement. This is your first point of interaction with the university and is essentially a written expose, around 4,000 characters, equating to approximately 600 to 620 words, about why you are applying for the subject to which you have applied. So essentially, why medicine? It really, really is a core component of the application. In many medical schools, it actually forms one or many of the interview questions. So it really needs to be a standout piece of writing. Why am I talking about this today? Well, I'm talking about it because it does relate to the insight development that I mentioned at the very, very beginning of that time chart just now. So the way the personal statements work, and this can be for a future webinar, or you'll find lots of information on our website about the personal statement changes, we are looking at 3 main questions. But for the purpose of today and for you to have some nuts and bolts to kind of go away with, I would like you to think about 3 main areas of reflection for you to start thinking about what you would like to include in your personal statement. So the first thing we need to think about is motivation. So you need to think about how to write. Why do you want to study medicine? And this is where the insight development is really, really important. What have you been doing to learn about medicine as a subject, medicine as a career? Leads nicely into that exploration where you can give evidence about what you have done and what you have learned from that. And then suitability as the third point, which is with what you have looked at and what you have done and what you have learned from it, how has this proven to you that you are a great fit for medicine and that medicine by proxy is a great fit for you? So those are essentially the 3 reflective questions I always recommend students to think about when they're writing their statements, to give them a really, really great structure. But to get that structure, we need to get things to talk about. So this is just to contextualize the kind of things that UK medical schools are looking for. This might be slightly different to other medical schools around the world, which may favour other activities. But here in the UK, these are some of the most important things. And a lot of it is about gaining awareness of it as a career and appreciating that medicine is not just an academic subject. A career in medicine is a career working with people. So they really want to see that learners have explored the profession through patient-facing opportunities. So that could be through volunteering or charity work, not even in a hospital setting, but working with vulnerable adults or volunteering with children. But either way, it's important to show that you understand the caring nature of healthcare and that you absolutely know what you'll be getting yourself in for, both professionally and academically. So that could also be including attending lectures and learning about current developments in medicine, or watching documentaries, reading books or news articles. All of this comes together to show that you are aware of the realities of medicine, both the positive and the negative or less than positive, and make sure that you still think and believe and know it is a right decision for you. I mentioned work experience just now and how patient facing is a great opportunity to show that you are the right person for medicine. I mentioned, of course, clinical experiences are a great opportunity, especially those, and more so those that have that opportunity to speak with patients rather than just observe surgery. That's a great way of showing what medicine is like for other people, but it's not really telling you what medicine is like for you and how you will be great at a healthcare profession such as medicine. So other types of experiences that would be really, really useful include hospices and working with kind of ill patients there, or first aid and volunteering with, say, St. John Ambulance or the Red Cross in delivering first aid to public events around the world. It could be working in retail and working in charity shops or other stores and just having an opportunity to work with the wider public. So all of this would be really, really, really useful. And I just wanted to take a moment to kind of show what universities do think. So we've taken some of these quotes from quite a popular university here in the UK called Imperial College London. And they reiterate that experience does not need to be medical related, which often surprises and perplexes international students that I've worked with over the years, who expect that it has to be a clinical experience because they are applying to medicine. But actually, universities do put great value on these responsible and caring roles that people have given, because the most important thing is not necessarily what the student has watched somebody else do, but what they have learned about themselves in regards to developing the key skills and attributes that they want to see in their doctors. So, for example, teamwork and leadership and communication, and some of the other skills that you there see on the slides. The other thing as well is, since COVID-19 and the pandemic, meaning the hospitals were closed and notoriously harder to access for experience, so too has progressed telemedicine and working through meeting patients online. And in that vein, therefore, work experience that is available online is also incredibly useful. Because healthcare is progressing online and the landscape is changing rapidly, having experience where you can volunteer online or speak with patients online is also incredibly beneficial as well. So just wanted to flag some opportunities for you. So no matter where in the world you are, you can access virtual work experience. This is an opportunity for me to also flag that to apply to UK medical schools, you do not need UK experience in the NHS. Your experience in different countries around the world that you may have been able to gain experience already is entirely transferable, because the most important thing you'll be writing about is what you have learned about yourself, which can be translated to no matter what country you come from and to no matter what country you want to apply to. But should you wish to have some UK opportunities, then here is the one that we run here from the Medic Portal, our volunteering and reflection program, which gives students the opportunity to speak with elderly people through Zoom or other online platforms to provide them company and understanding and empathy. You know, elderly generations may often feel quite lonely sometimes, and so we really, really want to give them the opportunity and to give you the opportunity to have these connecting conversations, and for you to therefore develop your abilities to develop your communication skills and interpersonal skills that universities really want to see. If you are hoping to gain some in-person experience here in the United Kingdom, you may have heard of Investin. Investin is a consultancy as part of Dukes Plus, of which the Medic Portal is part of. I just wanted to flag up to you their summer experiences, so you can have a look on their website to see what it's like to learn to be a doctor in our London-based experiences over the summer vacation. When then thinking about the second point of the statement, you've already done your exploration of motivation and what it's like to be a doctor and why you now know you want to be a doctor. But this is the time for you to start then proving that you are suitable. And again, you can see here that a lot of the skills I've listed here in bullet points are relatable to what UK medical schools look for. This list is not exhaustive. There is just a list of the key words that they might look for in personal statements and in interviews. And you can see a lot of it is based on people skills. Okay, less so the academic abilities, though some of them are, of course, there. But a lot of it is to do with how you can communicate with people, which really, really shines a light on how medicine in the UK is a very communicative course. Here is some really important reading I think would be a fantastic opportunity for you, especially in relation to getting ready for your interviews, about recalibrating yourselves to what the UK medical schools look for and what the UK profession of medicine expects from their medical students who've graduated. So there's a number of online resources, two of my favorite of which are called Outcomes for Graduates and Good Medical Practice, which are available online and in PDF formats. This will give you an opportunity to immerse yourself in the world that is applying to medicine in the UK and going through the UK training scheme, and for you to just be aware of what's to expect and what kind of skills and person they are hoping to have in their medical schools. So then you know then how to prove that you are that kind of person. Just want to give us a little bit of a pause so you have a bit of a break from me for 1 or 2 minutes. This is an activity I think would be something that you should be doing as part of your personal statement planning over the summer vacation, or now if you've already started. You should think about the key skills that you think is important to demonstrate to universities. I've given you some examples here just to think about yourselves. I'm not going to ask you to share, do not worry. But just take a moment to think, maybe choose a skill or two from this box here and think, where in your background, in your education, in your experiences, could you demonstrate that you, for example, have the great communication skills needed of a future doctor? Or leadership or empathy, whichever skill feels stand out to you at the moment, think about some examples of experiences or opportunities that you've had that can help prove that. So I'm just going to give you a minute or two to kind of really focus on this task, have a break from my voice, and then we'll come back and I'll give you some examples. Okay, so here are some examples. So it could be Duke of Edinburgh Award and those extracurricular activities, or it could be first aid courses or some positions of responsibility in school to demonstrate things such as leadership and teamwork. So these kind of key skills don't have to come from the biology or chemistry classrooms or come from work experience. It could be from other facets of your life, both in an extracurricular sense and a supercurricular sense. The alternative thing that you could do is I could have given you the examples box. And this is where you could have a list of all the things that you think have been really important activities that you've done yourself over the last few years. And you could do the opposite task, which is I did the Duke of Edinburgh Award, for example. What did I learn from doing that? Did I learn communication skills and having to work as a team in my expedition? Of course, teamwork. Maybe you had quite a tricky path to navigate and you had to work as a team to help you all get to the end destination, or working under pressure. So whichever way you prefer, I invite you to try both. I think it's a really interesting activity for you to do. But this is absolutely the most important part of the personal statement for you to demonstrate that you not only are a good scientist and will enjoy medicine, but more importantly, you have the right skills and attributes to be a great doctor as a person. So in a nutshell, reflection, reflection, reflection is really, really important. So moving on then to the next aspect for international students to consider, which is choosing a medical school and where to even start when choosing. I'll go into this in a bit more detail later, but you may know already that you have a certain number of choices to choose on UCAS. Students across the world, if they're applying to the UK, will have 5 university courses that they can apply for. But for medicine applicants, you have a limit that only 4 out of those 5 can be medicine. Now, when there are dozens of medical schools here in the United Kingdom, it's quite hard to narrow that list down to just 4. But I invite you to have a think about some of these key ideas that can help you to whittle down that list just a little bit shorter to help you then make sure you're choosing the right courses that fit you and your personal interests. So the first one I'm going to talk about is intercalation. Now, it sounds like a long, fancy word, but it's a wonderful opportunity for students who really want to take advantage of their time studying medicine to give themselves an extra year to potentially gain an extra qualification, an extra bachelor's or a master's degree, and is an opportunity for students to essentially pause their medical studies for a year, typically between their 3rd and 4th year, though this can change depending on the university. And they can undertake some extra studies in a science or clinical research capacity to go into a bit more depth of a specific area of physiology or genetics that really interests them. Or in other cases, if students want a completely different experience, they could ask to intercalate in an area of humanities or social sciences, where I've seen intercalation opportunities in journalism or law, for example. So it's a wonderful opportunity that some courses automatically embed within their programs. So when you're looking at medical schools, if you see some that are 6 years in length, most of the time it's because they already have an intercalated degree as part of the program. Most medical schools, however, are 5 years in length, and that means that the intercalation is not automatically embedded, but is certainly an option in most instances. So if you know at the point of application, you absolutely would be delighted to have an intercalation opportunity, then looking at 6-year programs can help to guarantee that possibility for you. If you're a bit unsure or you don't want an intercalation opportunity, then it might be more important to look at the 5-year pathways instead. This is also very important because of this next slide, where I am going to touch upon the fees and funding for international students. Now, unfortunately, in the UK, quite generally, scholarships are very few and far between for international students. There are some available for a select number of universities, but they are not full ride scholarships. So even if scholarships are available, it will only be for a partial amount of the overall tuition. So in the vast majority of cases, international students will need to be prepared to prove to the universities in most cases that there are the private funds available from family or other means to make sure that the tuition fees can be covered, as well, of course, as the maintenance and the cost of living fees. Now, the fees all depend on the university, and some of them have very different funding structures to others. So I just wanted to give you some examples, as you can see below, about how some universities look more appealing than others when you do the initial calculations. So, for example, we have the University of Leicester. Their programme, when I last looked, was approximately £29,000 per year for years 1 and 2, but then has a drastic increase to £47,000 per year for years 3 to 5. And that is a 5-year programme. Whereas King's College in London has the same rate for 5 years, being, at the time of writing, £53,000 per year, so over 5 years. But then somewhere like Cambridge has a per annum cost of just over £70,000, plus the college fee, as they have a collegiate structure. And bearing in mind, Cambridge is a 6-year programme. So what is really important, therefore, to work out here is how affordable is the journey to medicine in the UK? generally speaking, but also year by year, and how many years is your program in length. And bearing in mind, this is sadly just the tuition fees. So this only includes your study. It doesn't include accommodation or your food, your meals, your living expenses. That is all on top as well. And the other thing to consider on top of that, as I just mentioned, is the cost of living in various parts of our country. There are some more affordable places to live than others, and as you can imagine, the most expensive places to live are found in the southeast and the London areas, as you can see on the map there in red, and the most affordable being the areas in green, namely East Midlands in Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So as part of the bigger picture about affordability, think about the tuition as well as the living costs, which include accommodation, food, entertainment, etc. Linking on that location as well is the element of any geographical preferences that you may have, such as would you like your university experience to be in a big city or a campus? You might also want to look a little bit deeper in where you'll actually be learning medicine. And we have some different options here. So we have what are called teaching hospitals, where the hospital has the university essentially inside of it. So City, St George's University, Cardiff University are all known as teaching hospitals. So the university, the classes you're going to have might already just be in the same building as the hospital for patients. There might be other places, typically those in London, for example, which have the university in the same city or borough of a city, like Imperial, UCL, etc. But something that's quite important to also think about is that universities may have to send students perhaps quite far away from their initial university location. So, for example, the University of Exeter, which is based in the southwest of England, in Devon, may have their clinical attachments in Devon, or Cornwall, which is the neighbouring county, or perhaps further north towards Bristol or other areas like Somerset. So it's quite important to be aware of that. But also, there might even be some wonderful opportunities that some students might like the idea of, which is Birmingham, where the last time I looked, they offered students to have possible elective experiences abroad. For some, that would be an amazing opportunity that you wouldn't want to miss. For others, who might want to be a bit more fixed in the locations because you're already moving once to the United Kingdom and you'd rather not need to move city again, it's a very personal decision for you to think about, which I think is why I've included it tonight for you to take some time to reflect on what is important for you. The next thing which is really important to reflect on is the course structure or the teaching style, if you will, of the program. Now, there are three main categories of teaching styles. There are other names for some of these, but just to make things easier for this evening, I wanted to just introduce to you our traditional, integrated, and problem-based learning experiences and how they're all taught quite differently, which lends to a quite significantly different learning experience. So our universities that are deemed traditional have a science-based teaching style. So they will teach students in essentially places like Oxford and Cambridge, where the first few years of the learning is mostly about science. So it could be biochemistry, it could be physiology and functions of the human body, it could be anatomy, looking at the human body itself. And a lot of the teaching is done through large group lectures where there could be hundreds of people in one room listening to one professor. It's very, very quite intense and an auditory experience, lots of listening. Whereas integrated, on the other hand, is a bit different. It does involve elements of lectures, of course, but there are also more tutorials and smaller group sessions working together, looking at the human body in a systems-based approach. So looking at particular organ systems, for example, in the body. They also envelop clinical contact starting as early as the first year whereas in the traditional experience we just looked at, it might be as far as year 3 or year 4 being the first time that students go into clinical exposure. On the other side of the spectrum, we have problem-based learning, which is a lot more interactive and hands-on compared to the traditional approach. Of course, there are lectures, there will always be lectures, but the vast majority of the learning is done through scenario-based group work. So students will be brought into a group of maybe 10 students perhaps, depends on the university, and there is a professor or tutor facilitator who will help to continue the conversation. So less teaching, but more enabling the students to be in charge of their own learning. So quite different opportunities of ways of learning, and quite important for you to think, therefore, about how you best learn. When you're in high school now, do you find yourself a better learner studying through learning and listening to your teachers, or do you prefer to do a bit more hands-on learning? I invite you to have a think about that. If you'd like a taste of what it's like to learn medicine, then I invite you to look at some summer programs. For example, summer boarding courses, or SBC, have an opportunity to learn what it's like to study medicine here in the United Kingdom over the summer vacation. And if it's not SBC, there'll be other providers as well, but just an opportunity for you to think about what it is like to study medicine. You will then, once you think about all of these wonderful personal opinions, you'll then need to start thinking, out of all of this, how do I whittle down my choices? Just some parameters I wanted to highlight again to you. You of course know already that you can only choose 4 medical schools. In that already shorter list, students can only apply to one of Oxford or Cambridge, not both of them, that will be disallowed. And then the next best thing is to start thinking of strategy. So strategy by the UCAT admissions test and strategy by grade requirements, because each university will ask for different grades. So for example, in a A-level context, some might need 3 A's, AAA, others may need A star, A star, A, or higher in some cases. So it's really important to be aware of where do you feel that you would be the strongest possible fit to convince them that you are the best student for that university. There are some options as well here which are only for international students. So at the moment, they do not take UK students, meaning that there are more places available for international students. And I'll go into a bit more depth of that in just a moment in the next slide. Before I move on, I do want to just highlight that we do have that 5th choice available for medicine applicants, but it must be an alternative course. So it could be something as closely related as biomedical sciences, or it could be something different entirely if you can negotiate with the university that they're willing to accept an alternative personal statement. UK medical schools. I mentioned we have a whole range of medical schools around the country. As you can see here, this map is not exhaustive. It has most of the options. And you can see that we do have some different categories of medical schools. We have some that are available for undergraduates, meaning students straight from high school like yourselves, which is great. We do have some also which are for postgraduate students only. And what that means is students who have finished or will be soon to finish their first degree in biomedical sciences or similar, who then want to move into medicine as a graduate at around 21 years old. But there are also some universities that are for international students only. And I do just want to flag some of these this evening, because as I mentioned, these are options that are available to you as international candidates and not to UK applicants. For undergraduate students on the call, for those who are still in high school, you can look at new options in University of Bolton, otherwise known as Greater Manchester, University of Hertfordshire, that I'll talk a little bit more about later on at the end of the slides, as well as a new programme that's just been launched in the news from St Mary's, Twickenham. If we have any postgraduate students on the call, then you have 4 options available to you: Chester, Pes Cumbria, aka Imperial's graduate course route, Surrey, and 3 counties in Worcester. So superb opportunities for you to explore these international only opportunities so that you have more opportunities of spaces and a really diverse and international cohort. Going for a bit of a deeper dive into strategy and data-derived decision making, I wanted to introduce you to two key sets of data that's available from bodies here in the United Kingdom. One called the Office for Students, which is part of the UK government. Every year they release expected maximum intakes of students, aka how many students they can have in any year group, and they cannot exceed these numbers. These are often broken down into home students or UK fee-paying students, or overseas students or international students. So I've just done a little screenshot there of the list to show you just what the universities can take in terms of their cohorts and numbers. And then alongside that, I invite you to have a look at the Medical Schools Council document for entry requirements, because you might look at the Office for Students data and think, oh my gosh, there are only 19 spaces available for Bristol versus 28 for Birmingham, for example. But if you look at the ratios from the Medical Schools Council, you'll see that the number of applications to place or applications to interview also differ by the university. So don't just look at the number of places as the competition. If every student applied to the same universities because they had the most places, it's going to make the application even more competitive and drive up that ratio of number of applications to place or to interview. So as you can see here at the bottom, it's going to be incredibly important that no matter what the data says, your most competitive application will be choosing the university whose admission selection policy favours your strongest aspects. So whether that be the UCAT score that I'll talk about in a moment, your achieved GCSEs, your A-level predictions, whatever it may be, whatever they favour, your strongest application to help beat these ratios and become that student who's interviewed is chosen through strategic decision making based on your application strength to you. This moves nicely on to the UCAT, which is quite possibly the most pivotal part of an application to most medical schools. Most applicants to medicine in the United Kingdom do come with great expected grades or predicted grades. They may already have wonderful GCSEs or IB MYP scores, for example. So this admissions test called the UCAT, or University Clinical Aptitude Test, is a standardizing test that all students around the world who are anticipating applying to the UK have to study. So it means that all students can be compared based on the same set of possible questions that they can answer, and helps to compare students no matter their academic qualifications or background. It is required by almost all medical schools here in the country. It's a 2-hour computerized test that you can take in many, many cities around the world. It has its testing dates open between mid-July to the end of September of the summer between year 12 and year 13, or grade 11, grade 12. So the penultimate and final year of high school. Students can only take the examination once, so it is incredibly important that students take preparation for this exam with utmost seriousness. It really can be the difference between being invited to interview and not having that invitation for interview. A brief conversation about the UCAT structure today, because we do have webinars running at the moment going into a deeper dive about every section of the UCAT exam. So make sure to check out our website and find out when our next one is going to be. But just for a brief overview, we do have 4 sections of the UCAT exam we'll need to prepare for, touching verbal reasoning, decision making, quantitative reasoning, and situational judgment. Of varying lengths, as you can see, but one thing that is quite consistent is that you'll never have longer than a minute to answer a question. These are incredibly challenging questions, Not necessarily by difficulty, because if there was no time limit, most students would probably finish the exam with almost full marks. The challenge is doing it under timed pressure and seeing just how much you're able to achieve in a very, very short period of time. Why is this UCAT used? Well, it's used to help students show off that they are wonderful students beyond just what their A-level or IB scores show. But more importantly, it's for universities who choose to use the examination to help them sift between the number of applicants that they have. Each university has a different policy. Some go as strongly as saying that they only rank their students by their UCAT score. Or what that means is that all that matters to them in selecting for interview is what they scored in the exam. All the way down to universities that don't use the UCAT at all. And there are, of course, others in the middle. So you can see here there is a clear difference between those which have high emphasis and those which have low emphasis. Ultimately, the higher the score that you have, the better. And essentially, if you have a really, really good score, then you're probably going to want to look at universities that favour the UCAT because you'll have a more compelling and competitive application. Just wanted to highlight what the scores look like. So every section is out of 900, except for the situational judgment, which is marked out of bands 1 to 4. So overall, you can have 3 times 900, meaning 2,700 in total. If you see information relating to scores out of 3,600, that's because from this year onward, one section of the UCAT is no longer continuing, and that's the abstract reasoning section. So from this year forward, all of the scores will be relating to the maximum of 2,700. And you can see there that high scores are typically found in the top 20% of test takers. Low scores are looking at the bottom 50 to 60% of test takers, and medium, they're somewhere in the middle. So a high score is only going to help your applications. As I mentioned, if you do have a high score, you may want to apply to those unis that favour high scores. Medium, you may want to look at those which have a more holistic approach, where they look at the UCAT in combination with other factors such as the personal statement. If you have low scores, you might find places that just need the UCAT, but value things like the personal statement or your academics a lot more than the UCAT. I'll go into some examples of these now. So this is a non-exhaustive list of what we perceive to be high score universities. So just to give you an example, I already mentioned about Imperial, but UCL also do the same, where they will have a cutoff or a ranking system at a high decile or high expectation. Same with Glasgow, but you may also have those which have thresholds. So less so that they say that they definitely rank, but that they expect students to achieve over a particular number, like Newcastle. Medium are those more holistic places. So it could be that places like Anglia Ruskin have a cutoff at a lower decile compared to the higher universities just mentioned, or that there is a numerical calculation of sorts combining factors like UCAT and academic history together to create a score, like Leicester, or that they do rank applicants, but they state that the lowest score that they selected was actually pretty low. So St Andrews is quite accommodating for their cutoff scores. So we put them in that medium category. Or some examples of low or no score universities. So it could be that universities do use the UCAT, but have a much lower weighting for UCAT, such as Aston, who say that they do need the UCAT to be taken, but there is no cutoff. Or Queen's Belfast, where they do have a numerical calculation, but the weighting is significantly favouring their GCSE or equivalent results. So 36 of 42 points available come from the GCSEs, and only 6 points come from the UCAT. It could be that they have quite a low threshold, like Kiel, or that they have no cutoff score at all, like Hertfordshire, or that they don't need the UCAT at all for their applications to that university, such as Buckingham. On that note, we hopefully have a speaker from University of Buckingham here today who wanted to join you and speak to you about study options in the University of Buckingham for medicine. Can I just confirm if we do have Stephen in the chat? Just bear with me as we can see. Hello? Okay, I don't see Stephen, unfortunately. I don't know if they've been able to join effectively, but essentially I'm very happy to run through some information about Buckingham this evening with you. If you have any questions at the end, I'd be very happy to help. So medicine at University of Buckingham is a great opportunity for students to apply to medicine. It's a 4.5-year program, which is a great opportunity for students to have a bit of a gap between the end of their studying in their final year of high school and starting university. So you start in January and you do the complete program in 4.5 years as to 5. So that's a really great, unique selling point for them. They have 210 places in total, but as you can see, they have no cap on international student numbers. There is quite, in most places, a government imposed quota. Normally it's around 7.5%. What that means is that if a cohort can take 100 students, only 7.5 technically, but 7 students can come from outside of the United Kingdom. So you can see that the numbers are normally much, much lower, but in Buckingham, they don't have that quota because they are a private university. Students amazingly can apply either on UCAS or to give yourself an extra choice. So to give you more than 4 choices, they do enable learners to apply directly via their website, which is a wonderful opportunity for students to try their 4 choices on UCAS, as well as applying to Buckingham offline through their website as a 5th medical school option. No UCAT is required. They do have their own admissions test, so it's not test free. But if students were not the happiest with their UCAT results, it gives them an opportunity to still apply for medicine here in the United Kingdom, but not using that UCAT examination. As you can see there, it is a well-established medical school, fully accredited, fully qualified, and students have a wonderful opportunity of going through and gaining then their provisional registration to study and to work in the UK General Medical Council. Okay. There's a QR code there at the bottom that I'm sure Stephen would have invited you to have a read of the website. And if you have any questions about Buckingham at the end of the conversation, then just please do put them in the chat. And then a second university who wanted to have a spotlight this evening, and we're very happy to work closely with, is the University of Hertfordshire, which is a new medical school which is just going to be opening very, very soon. It's opening, as you can see here, for 2026, is only at the moment taking international students. So there are no quotas or competition for places with UK students, and you'll have a really wonderful, diverse cohort of international medical learners as well. You can see here that it's ranked really, really highly for its medical sciences department that already exists, and now they're expanding to include medicine. Students have the wonderful opportunity of gaining clinical placements really, really early on in their placements, as early as their first year. As a new medical school, they have all state-of-the-art resources and digital platforms for them to learn. They also have guaranteed accommodation, which I think is actually quite rare for many universities here in the United Kingdom. So you're guaranteed accommodation on campus for all 5 of those years, subject to their conditions. Graduate outcomes is incredibly strong from this university, as high as 98% of students. It's also incredibly close to London, so it gives students an opportunity to live and be close to London, but also be kind of close to other cities in the wider area as well. So you have the best of both worlds, where you can still travel a lot outside, but a lot of the placements or research or networking events you may want to go to are in the heart of London that you're just a quick tube ride away from. There are some scholarships available, which is wonderful for first-year students. And you can see that the quality of teaching that you'll receive will be really, really, really strong. Again, there's a QR code there that you're invited to learn more about. But these are just 2 universities that the Medic Portal work really, really closely with, and I'm sure would be very happy to answer any questions that you may have. And if you do want to learn more about their courses, then feel free to have a look on our website or their websites, of course. So in summary, to end this call and before we go into questions and answers, if there are any, here are some questions as final takeaway points this evening, would like you to think about. When choosing the right medical school, of course, the biggest question is going to be, what is my UCAT score? Which you won't have yet. You'll have it in the summer just before you apply, but there will be lots of conversations at that point about what is my UCAT score and does it fit what the universities expect of me? Also check their academic requirements to make sure that your predictions or achieved grades, if you've already finished school, hit the absolute minimum of what they expect. Ideally, you will exceed those academic conditions, but as long as you meet them and other areas of your application are strong, then that is all good. Think about the teaching and learning style. So if your UCAT score is good and you have lots and lots and lots of options open to you, then think about, do you prefer that traditional learning experience where you have lots and lots of science to begin with? Or do you prefer the complete opposite of that, where the problem-based learning scenarios really captivated your attention because you are more of a hands-on learner who enjoys interactive experiences? Also have a think about where you want to live, both in a geographical context, but also in relation to where your medical teaching and clinical exposures will be. And then lastly, do you like the idea of that intercalated degree? And if you do want to have that, then to make sure that when you're researching universities, you see which ones can guarantee that for you and which ones are optional for you that you can then join later in your studies there. Just wanted to finish off then by explaining to you how we can further help you to get to where you want to be, which is ideally in a UK medical school. We have a range of free to access resources on our website, themedicportal.com. Please do go and have a look. They are absolutely wonderful. But we do help thousands and thousands of students year in, year out with extra practice to help them stand out and to give themselves the best possible shot of converting that dream to become a doctor into a reality. So we do a variety of extra support options, such as private consultations, so meeting with myself as a senior university advisor or other people in my team to sit down and have conversations on a one-to-one basis about how to choose their medical schools, whether it is before the UCAT examinations or certainly after the UCAT results have come out. And we can sit down and strategize together about which medical schools might be the best fit for your portfolio of results. We have a range of UCAT masterclasses and tuition available to help really, really kind of skyrocket your scores. And as you can see here in the chart to the right there, the students who undertake training with us have a significantly higher average score than those who do not undertake tutoring or training. So it really, really is an exam that you should focus on in terms of your own preparation, and ideally, where possible, seek to have extra support that we can offer you by looking at our website. Personal statement guidance. So, we mentioned that at the beginning, that the personal statement is a really important first opportunity for you to show yourself off. So first impressions do matter. And we'd be very, very happy to link you up with medical students and doctors to make sure that your statement is on track. We have interview courses and mock panel and MMI interviews for you to put your skills to the test in simulated experiences. We have our Premier service as well, which covers almost everything in an almost unlimited capacity. So all of the above with lots and lots of support and guidance and so much more. So just to finish off then, I just want to invite you, so have a look at our website. I also include our email address here. So should you have any questions after the call, I'd be very, very happy to help. I can see Stephen is in the chat, but he can't hear or see him. So if you do have any questions, thank you, Stephen. Please do feel free to enter them into the chat box here, and Stephen or I will be very, very happy to answer. But just wanted to say, for those of you who can't stay, thank you so much for joining. I hope this talk has been very, very useful for you, and feel free to contact us soon for any future help that we'd be very, very happy to give to help you get into these UK medical schools. We'll stay around for a few questions, and hopefully we'll have some further chat. Okay, don't see any questions just yet, so I will just keep on refreshing, and hopefully we have some questions coming soon. Okay, question. We have, if an applicant already has a degree, can they take the UCAT? That's a really good question. Didn't have really much time to talk about this depth today, but I'm very happy to answer your question, so thank you, Bolu. Yes, so if you already have a degree, you can then apply to graduate entry medicine. You'll need to check the eligibility criteria to make sure that the degree you have is a suitable course to grant application eligibility for medicine. If you have a degree in a biological sciences area, typically speaking, you should be able to apply to most places. Some universities also accept students who have studied something entirely different, even within social sciences and humanities. So once you've checked that eligibility, you then have a look at what entrance examination they may need. In a lot of cases, the UCAT is still used as an admissions test, but you may also find that some medical schools require you to sit a different examination called the GAMSAT, GAMSAT, which is for graduates. So definitely double check. Both exams will be exams that you can only sit once. So my advice still remains the same. It is still incredibly important to focus on these examinations, as a lot of students who apply for graduate entry will have a 2-1 or above equivalent. So again, the admissions tests there are to help standardize all of the applicants who are applying from university already have degrees. I hope that helps answer your question. No worries, thank you. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions, so I'll just give it a few more seconds. If there are no more questions, then I will just finish off this call by saying thank you so much in coming to this webinar this evening. If you have any further questions after this evening, you can of course contact us on the info@themedicportal.com email address I put up on the screen momentarily, or find us on our website and contact us through there. Thank you all so much for joining, and good luck with your applications, and hopefully speak to you soon. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen.